I'm Joe Grizzly, bitch.
What up, Militia? I mean Joe Grizzly. And when I'm not watching a bunch of shitty movies so I can give you a list of the worst movies of 2024, I'm at the Grizzly Cave, watching movies, reading comments, listening to metal, and of course, crushing beers. And now that it's a new year, it's time to take a look back at the worst movies of 2024. These are the worst of the worst. The biggest piles of shit that were released last year. But before I get to the list, can you please like this video if you like it? And if you like it enough, can you please go to the channel and hit the subscribe button and then the bell notification so you'll never miss an episode. Also, please follow me on all social media platforms so you can get channel updates, movie news, and all other forms of badassery. Now let's go ahead and get this out of the way. Let's talk about the worst movies of 2024. This is Grizzly Grade Reviews. So coming in at number 15 is The Watchers. And this movie was directed by M. Night Shyamalan's daughter, and it stars Dakota Fanning. And it is about a girl who goes to this forest somewhere in Ireland, and it's like this real remote forest. And when she goes in, she realizes that she cannot get out, and she ends up finding these strangers that are trapped in this seemingly glass box out in the woods. And they don't go out at night because every night this group of creatures comes out and observes them, and all they got to do is stand there and let these creatures watch them. And that's pretty much the premise of the movie. And honestly, it's a good concept, but it didn't work for me once everything was revealed, and some of the issues that unfolded in the movie were just completely illogical. And that kind of makes sense because this was directed by M. Night Shyamalan's daughter, which I'm going to go out on a limb here and I'm going to say that he actually ghost directed this movie, because everything in this movie that is wrong screams M. Night Shyamalan and all of his imperfections. It's filled with bad writing, illogical scenarios, and honestly, it builds up to this reveal of what these creatures are. And although the reveal itself isn't a letdown, the execution afterwards is what the real problem is. Ultimately, this movie was a letdown, but it's not unwatchable. It's just got all the bad qualities that M. Night Shyamalan is known for, which is the reason why I believe he truly is the one who directed this movie, and his daughter just kind of has her name on it. And that ultimately made it a very annoying watch. I can dismiss a lot of cheesiness and a lot of illogical stuff in some movies, but M. Night Shyamalan, and now if his daughter did direct this, now she also has a problem with bad writing. And honestly, the movie takes itself way too serious to have these logic issues and this bad writing. It's kind of sad because Isana Shyamalan just should have forged her own way and did her own thing and just kept her dad's hands out of this altogether. Coming in at number 14 is probably going to piss a lot of people off because I know that I am on an island with this. But that is going to be Never Let Go, the newest Alexandra Aja film starring Halle Berry. And I gotta tell you, like, this movie is also one of my biggest disappointments of the year, because you have not only Halle Berry, who is a phenomenal actress, and you have Alexandra Aja, who is a director that I really, really like. And those two together should work for me, but it didn't. So the movie's about this evil force takes over the world, and there is essentially just this mom and her two twin boys that are left, and they're out in this remote cabin in the woods, and they will not go further than what these long ropes they have that they tie around their waist will let them go. And that rope is tethered to the house that they live in. There's some kind of magical barrier or voodoo that's involved with keeping them safe as long as they are tethered to the house. And all that sounds good. And you get some scenes in the movie where there's these legit, like, evil creatures that are creepy and really cool. The problem with this movie is really it's the whole concept and the whole writing process of the movie. It leaves so much up to interpretation that ultimately, to me, it ruins the movie. Because you go back through after you see the ending of this movie, which is left completely ambiguous. At least you think it does. And granted, hey, maybe it's too smart for me, but in my eyes, they didn't give us enough material to work with here to even have that interpretation to even be questioned. Because you don't know what's real. You don't know what the rules are. You don't know if this is correct or if this is not correct. There's too many questions, way too many questions for this movie to make sense in my head, and ultimately it ruined the experience for me. Now, again, normally I'm a person that can handle movies that have ambiguous endings and are left up to interpretation, but I was extremely let down in this movie, and more importantly, I was bored. And that's something that just doesn't work with any movie. And for an Alexander Aja film, that is not the expectation, because his movies are exciting. Yeah, he did the Hills Have Eyes remake. He did Crawl. Like, he did High Tension. These movies are not boring movies, but somehow he made this movie boring, and it was more boring than it was intriguing to me. So again, I know I'm out on an island with this one, but a movie that's directed by one of my favorite modern directors letting me down, on top of it being these great ideas that were executed poorly in my opinion, and with it being boring as fuck, it just ended up on my list because of how disappointed I was in this movie. And these two movies are really the only two movies on the list that could be taken off of the list. They made it here because of how much I was disappointed in how they turned out. And plus, I wanted to get to 15. And I know that that's kind of a shitty way to do things, but top 13 doesn't sound as good as top 15. But ultimately, they made it on this list because, again, of my disappointment in both of these films. Now, the rest here on out, they earned their way. Hands down, these movies go from barely watchable to completely unwatchable to movies that just pissed me off. So from here on out, the gloves are off. This is where it's going to get rough, because these movies fucking suck. So coming in at number 13 is The Crow. And you know the story, two lovers get killed in cold blood, and the man comes back as this avenging spirit that is powered by a magical crow. And I know I'm really dumbing it down because I am a huge fan of the source material that this is based off of. But this movie was such a bummer that I don't really feel like praising it that much, even the source material, because I'm kind of exhausted with it. Between this and me doing my Grizzly Guide episode and not being able to finish because someone keeps on reporting my videos, I'm kind of done talking about The Crow. So there's your explanation on why that episode of the Grizzly Guide hasn't released yet. It's probably not going to get released because people suck. They like to report your stuff. But back to the movie. So there's so much wrong with this movie that it's really hard to break it down in a way that doesn't sound like me just being a pissed off fanboy. So I'm probably going to come off sounding like that, but hear me out. So I'm one of those people that I can take the nostalgia of the first film out completely and just go into this fresh, because again, I am a fan of the intellectual property. So when I went into this, I was like, all right, it's got Bill Skarsgård in it. He's awesome. He should be able to knock this out of the park. He's got the acting chops to do it. And then I go in and I watch it and I come out and I'm just angry. Just angry. Because they completely failed to capture the source material in any essence at all. They try to convince you that Bill Skarsgård's character of Eric and the character Shelley, that I think her name's FKA Twigs, whatever the hell her name is, who cares, that she's portraying, love each other. And the writing's so bad and they play it so fast and loose that you just don't buy into the romance whatsoever. They have no on-screen chemistry whatsoever, which is crazy because allegedly they're a couple in real life. So tells you how long that relationship's gonna last, which is crazy because I guess the director and the writer just thought that if you just sit around, do drugs, and fuck all day, you love each other. So kind of says a lot about them. But again, they just don't establish enough of this romance for us to believe that they are bound by even after death, that their souls are so intertwined because their love transcends death. Like, you don't believe that at all. You never buy in to their love whatsoever. One of the other things is there's hardly any action in this movie. It's scattered here and there, but it's like quick little scenes here, and then there's the one big scene that you see in the trailer where he's going through this opera house and he's getting stabbed and shot, and he's just coming back and he's just killing people. That scene was pretty good. It was a very good bloody action scene. In fact, it was one of the bloodiest scenes I had seen this year. Problem is, it was too little too late, because throughout this whole movie, they established the Crow as this emo pussy that just cries. And then, out of nowhere, he's a badass. Just really bad writing, really bad timing. The villain is an absolute nobody. Like, he's not compelling. He's not intimidating. He's just there. He's just a guy that has this weird ability to, like, push people into doing what he wants them to do, and this, that, and other. It's basic as fuck. And the guy who plays it, which is very strange, because this actor, and I'm sure he's a really nice guy, but his entire career is him playing the villain of the week on a TV show. That's what this guy is. And it sucks for him, but he also took the part. But he ends up being even less memorable than a villain of the week on a CW superhero show. Ultimately, this is just like most comic book adaptations. I don't know how you fuck it up when you have all the hard work done for you. Everything's written for you. All you have to do is follow it just a little bit. Just a little bit. You ain't got to go word for word, but it's right there. You don't have to do a fucking thing. And for some reason with these bad comic book films, these studios just like, oh, we're going to take all these liberties, and then you get a product that is not only inferior, but it's an insult to people who love this source material. So yeah, fuck this movie. Coming at number 12 is Trap, the new M. Night Shyamalan film. And yeah, M. Night Shyamalan pretty much is getting put on this list twice. So, because I damn sure know he directed The Watchers, and his daughter just had her name on it. But I digress. Trap is about a man played by Josh Hartnett who takes his daughter to a pop concert to see her favorite artist. And when he gets there, little does he know that he is actually a serial killer who is being trapped by this grand scheme with the FBI, where they are going to lock down this facility and they're going to find him. Sounds like a great idea. And honestly, it was one of my most anticipated movies of the year. And was I so fucking disappointed. To me, this is M. Night Shyamalan at his peak of all his imperfections. The writing alone is a problem, but just, it's almost childlike in how much he like gravitates towards the illogical in a situation that already is crazy in itself. And again, you could turn your brain off in these movies and say, okay, it's just a movie. But when you're playing it so fucking serious and you want to create this very thrilling narrative, it's really hard to buy into it when you keep doing shit that's so fucking stupid. Like, for instance, Josh Hartnett, there's a scene in the movie, and again, I'm not ruining the movie for you. You see this in the trailer. So there's a scene where he walks up to give his daughter a t-shirt. They do not have her size. So the t-shirt guy who he's friendly with, number one, tells him what's going on, because the only people that's supposed to be knowing what's going on is the staff of this event and the police. It just looks like they have a lot of security, not like they're performing a sting or anything. So he tells him what's going on first off. Then Josh Hartnett's character goes back to get this t-shirt for his daughter, and he's like, oh, it's in the back. Won't you come on back with me? So he takes him back to a secure area where no one's supposed to be there but staff. And in the real world, that does not fucking happen. It does not happen. It never happens. That's not how things work. There's another scene where at one of the concession stands, Josh Hartnett is trying to create a distraction. So there's this packed concession stand with a wide open concept so you can see the fryers and everything. And somehow he walked, crossed over the counter, put on an apron, took 2 humongous glass jugs full of cooking oil, put them down in the fryers, and then sat back and waited until they exploded. On top of that, the girl that it exploded on, she just stood there and said, "Oh, there's glass in the fryer." Bam, blows up in her face. People are stupid. I don't think they're that fucking stupid. Back to him even crossing over the counter and doing this, there was a crowd of people there. You're going to tell me that nobody's seen him? Not one person's seen him. Makes no sense whatsoever. Then there's a couple other things that happen at the end that are just eye-rollingly bad. But the biggest issue that I have with this movie is the blatant nepotism. Because after you watch this film and you sit back and you think about it and you break it down in your head on what happened in this movie and what was going on, you realize that this was just one big audition tape for M. Night Shyamalan's daughter's music career, because she plays the pop star in the movie. Now, granted, she is a great singer. She did great. The problem is that you took her audition tape and you built a fucking movie around it and thought that we wouldn't see that. So I truly think that M. Night Shyamalan is so fucking arrogant that he thinks that his audience and the people watching the movie are stupid and they can't figure out all these illogical issues, nor can they figure out that he was just displaying his daughter's musical talent and built a movie around it, which is a slap in the face for a moviegoer. And then on top of all that, Josh Hartnett was completely wasted because he gave this great performance. When I tell you he was completely unsettling and he was phenomenal at what he did, I knew when they casted him he was going to be great, no matter how shitty this movie was. Even with the bad dialogue, even with all the illogical bullshit that happens, even with the cringy stuff that gets written into the script, he is phenomenal. And it's a damn shame that he got wasted on this pile of shit. Ultimately, I've been defending M. Night Shyamalan for years. I've said, he's done more great than he has bad. And it really sucks because now with the last handful of movies that he's brought out, now don't get me wrong, I love Unbreakable, I love The Sixth Sense, I like Split, and I like Signs. I think those are great movies. The Visit's one of those I thought was okay, but then you get The Happening. The Avatar movie I don't really hold against him, even though it was really bad, but that was a studio thing. You got Lady in the Water, you've got The Village, and you've got Knock at the Cabin, which was okay up until the end when really nothing fucking happened. And then you got Old, which is just crammed full of illogic bullshit and stuff. So I've been like a avid defender of him until this movie really made me look at all of his work with a microscope, and it's diminished my opinion of him as a director. And now, honestly, I'm going to be very cautious going into any of his movies ever again. Anytime his name's attached to anything now, I'm just going to say, oh, well, I might go see that. I might not. It's going to have to get some buzz for me to go see it now. Because at this point, he's just giving me just cannon fodder to shit on him. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to be the guy that does that. I really don't like making videos like this. I don't like giving negative reviews, but his arrogance has just gotten completely out of hand, and it's all over his movies. And there's a reason why he hasn't gotten a studio to fund one of his films in a long time. To my knowledge, he hasn't gotten a film funded since maybe Avatar. It's been a very, very long time. But ultimately, this was probably my biggest disappointment of the year. Coming in at number 11 is Joker, Fully I Do, Follow Your Ducks, whatever the hell it is. It's Joker 2. and honestly, I feel like this movie should be higher on my list, but that's just how bad everything is in front of it. So just think about that while we're going through this list. Joker 2 picks up directly after the first one, where Arthur Fleck is awaiting trial for his crimes in the previous film, and he somehow gets taken over to this less secure wing of Arkham and is introduced to another crazy person, and it's Harley Quinn, or Lady Gaga's version of Harley Quinn. And then the movie begins. And man, what a beginning it is. So I just want to start off by saying that the musical aspects of this movie is not its big problem. I think that using the musical aspects to like project the insanity that is going on in the mind of Arthur Fleck, I thought was a really good idea. And I think that when you think about doing something like that with a movie, Lady Gaga is the perfect choice to do it, because she's strange in herself, but she's unique, she's artistic, and it just works with her. But then you see this movie, and other than the grand like scenes where they're like doing showbiz numbers, that's pretty much giving you a look into how his mind's working at that moment, you get more of these little weird, cringy, random moments where they don't necessarily bust in a song. They just sing to each other individually, and it's awful. It's so bad that Lady Gaga actually isn't that great in those scenes. She's good in the big scenes, but in those scenes where it's just her and Arthur Fleck and they're like embracing each other and stuff, it's really weird, and it doesn't feel like it fits. It feels like these two are stoned out of their minds. They're two junkies that are stoned out of their minds, freaking singing lullabies to each other. It's just really, really strange, and it doesn't fit to me. And ultimately, it doesn't do anything to drive the story forward, which is the biggest issue that I think a lot of people are having, is that the musical parts, it doesn't affect the movie enough for them to even be in there. The whole story structure is all over the place. The movie doesn't know what the fuck it wants to be. It doesn't know if it wants to be a musical, if it wants to be a courtroom drama, if it wants to be a superhero film or a supervillain film. It doesn't know what it wants to be. And with that, it doesn't know who this movie is for. Because I can tell you right now, I can't tell you one person that this movie is targeted at. Because it's damn sure not targeted at people who are comic book movie fans. It's not targeted at general audiences. And it's not targeted at musical buffs. Because it's too metal to do that. And probably the biggest issue that I have with this movie altogether is why it was even made at all. Because the ending of this movie is the biggest fuck you to the audience that I have seen in decades. It literally takes everything that was so good about that original movie and shits right on it and says all this shit was for nothing. None of this means a damn thing. That good movie you watched, yeah, this movie just made that one fucking suck. To the point that I wish I'd have never watched this movie, because it has affected my opinion of the first film. And I hate to say that. It's going to be a couple of years maybe till I can just completely forget about most of the stuff that's happened in this movie, till I can appreciate that original movie again. And ultimately, it's made me rethink my opinion on Todd Phillips as a director. Todd, and it ain't because of his talent or his track record. The guy's made some great movies. He's made some funny ass movies. He's made some good movies. But the problem is this movie made him look like a pretentious asshole. And I know that most artists and most directors are. But to be just so on the nose about it, about just, hey, fuck you, I don't care if you like my first movie. This is me deconstructing that first movie just to piss you off. Doing something just to do it is ridiculous to me. And he did this just to piss people off. And Warner Brothers honestly should be ashamed of themselves for letting him do it. They should have told him, fuck you, we're not letting you do it. But no, the first one made a lot of money and is critically praised. So they said, fuck it, let's let him do it. And this is what we got. One of the worst movies of the year. Coming in at number 10 is The Strangers Chapter 1. Another one that feels like it should be higher on the list, but It's not. There's worse movies ahead of it. Yeah, this movie sucks, and for all the reasons that it shouldn't suck. It's being marketed as a origin to The Strangers. So it's not necessarily a remake or a reboot or a sequel or prequel, whatever. But they promise you all this, and then you get fucking nothing. What you get is a shot-for-shot reboot of the original movie, but with just a few things changed here and there. It's this movie that has some of the worst acting of the year. Madeline Pesh is god-awful. I hope I never see her in another movie again. I'm sure she's a nice person, but my God, she either was phoning it in or she is the worst actress of this generation, because she is really, really bad. And I know I'm being harsh, and I'm sorry, but she was awful. And normally you could tell if it was because of the script or the dialogue or anything like that. It wasn't. It was her performance and how she played stuff so serious, like in moments where she was like in moments of peril or moments of desperation or fear. She would, and it was literally like that. I was like, no one acts like that in real life, man. and I just, I hate it. I hate that I'm being so negative on it, but she was one of the reasons why I didn't like this movie. But not only that, this is some of the dumbest writing for a character I've ever seen. Like, and that's no stranger to The Strangers, because if you watch the other movies, these characters are stupid. There is no smart characters in this franchise whatsoever. And that really hurts this franchise and keeps it from being one of the greats to me. Because really the only Strangers movie that I actually really like is The Strangers Pray at Night. I think it's a solid slasher. But even the characters in that movie, they're stupid. They're really dumb. It's like, oh, there's a strange noise. Let me go out there and check it out. Like, it breaks every trope and it thinks its audience is brain dead. And you can only do that so many times before we check out. And right now I'm checking out. Like, I don't know if I'm going to go see the second chapter of this movie, because allegedly chapter 2 and 3 are already done filming and are waiting to be released. And honestly, if I was them, I'd lock those things away in a vault and I'd never let them out, or I would release it on Tubi at no cost to anybody, because they're just, if it's even a fraction like this, it's not going to be worth watching. Not only that, it also really, really sucks, because I do think that The Strangers, Scarecrow, Dollface, and I can't think of the other one, Pinup Girl or something like that. Those three characters, they are cool. They are unique, and they are very unsettling. And this movie kind of took that away, because they do weird things. Like, there's one scene, you see it in the trailer, where one of the characters has the girl, I think it's Dollface, has her at gunpoint with a shotgun in her face, and he's talking to her, and she just starts doing this weird scream, and it's just like the scene from Rob Zombie's Halloween, where little Michael Myers has the clown mask on. He's like, "I'm not listening." It's just like that. It's this edgelord scream that's supposed to be unsettling to us, but it just makes us laugh. There's one scene where Madeline Pesh's character is in a shower, and this shower is an open shower. It's nothing but glass, and it's not frosted glass or nothing. It's clear glass, and Scarecrow, the one with the bag on his head, goes right up to the glass in her field of vision and stands there for a long time. She never sees him. That doesn't happen. It doesn't happen in real life. So with all those host of issues, like, this earned its spot on this list. And to go back to what is really sad about this was directed by Rennie Harlan. If y'all don't know who Rennie Harlan is, Rennie Harlan's great. He done Die Hard, He did Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master. This guy's done some good movies. And then you got this. And he done all three of them, for what I understand. And guy might have just killed what was left of his directing career, and that sucks. I like the first Strangers movie okay, but after a rewatch, I've kind of seen all those flaws with the characters being stupid and stuff, so that kind of diminished that a little bit. I still like Strangers Pray at Night, but after that, now with this, man, they got to do something great in that second chapter, and I got to hear that it's great for me to go see it. I'm not wasting my money on it. I don't, unless I just am in the mood to shit on something, then I'll go in there and watch it just to bring y'all that really negative review that I know that y'all want. Coming in at number 9 is ISS, or International Space Station. And this movie is about the International Space Station that orbits the Earth and this group of astronauts and cosmonauts that go up there to be part of the new crew. And while they're up there, all hell breaks loose down on Earth and World War III kicks off, and everybody gets messages, secret messages from their respective governments telling them to take the space station at all costs. And that sounds like an incredible idea for a movie. Sounds like it should be thrilling. It sounds like it should be intriguing. It sounds like a movie I want to watch. And then I go watch it, and it is a big fucking snooze fest with horrible dialogue, even worse acting, and some really bad logic issues. Like I said, the acting's pretty bad. Everybody's like robots, pretty much. Like, there's no like real emotion in the movie. There's a couple of times where they have no choice but to show emotion, but just all these people are boring, and you don't really see that many boring people in one area, particularly something like a space station. These people should be interesting as hell, and they're not. They're like all boring as fuck, and none of them are gonna fight each other over this spaceship. If this was a real life scenario, not one of these people are like, all right, I'm gonna go kill my fucking crewmate so I can be up in space by myself and get freaking cabin fever in space, because everybody wants to do that. Everybody wants to be alone in space. You want to be up there with a bunch of rotten bodies. Yeah, no one would ever do this. In fact, it's even said in the movie, up here there is no countries, there is no borders. And that's true. That's how it works. In real life, I'm not saying that I would be so naive to think that this would never happen, but I just don't see it happening. I don't see that scientists, number one, there's scientists who may have patriotism at heart for their country, but ultimately they are men and women of science, and that science is everything to them. So I don't see them going to the route of bloodshed over just saying, hey, let's just chill out and see what happens down on Earth before we start fucking killing each other. I just don't see that happening. And maybe I'm naive, but to me it doesn't work, even though it should. On top of all that, there is, again, more logic issues. One thing is one of the characters goes outside the space station, I believe, to fix something. It's been a minute since I've seen this, but I believe he goes out there to fix some kind of bulkhead or something like that. And he gets cut loose. One of the characters cuts him loose, and he goes free floating out into space. And somehow he makes it back. That would never fucking happen. Once you're out there, you're out there. You can't come back. You're gone. And you're in the atmosphere too. It would never happen. And the ending was so unbelievably cringy. The quote final showdown was so cringy and just so uninspiringly boring that it was just the cherry on top of this shitty cake. And I wanted more, and I hate that this cool idea got wasted on this shitty movie, which is going to be a common trend on the next few movies on this list. Coming in at number 8 is our first Netflix movie, Time Cut. And Time Cut, on the outside, is a ripoff of last year's Totally Killer, a movie that I thought was absolutely phenomenal. And should have gotten a wide release in theaters instead of going straight to streaming, because it was a better movie that Blumhouse put out, but yet they didn't put it into theaters. It made no fucking sense. Night Swim got a release, but Totally Killer didn't. Shame on you, Blumhouse. But Time Cut is not a rip-off of Totally Killer. It's actually the opposite, because Time Cut came out, or I should say Time Cut was filmed before, almost 2 years before Totally Killer was. So these movies are what you call twin movies, and it happens all the time, like Armageddon and Deep Impact, that kind of scenario. But the similarities in these two movies is very eerie, like to the point that it just seems like one ripped off the other. Even if that's not the case, it happened anyway. Like, the mask of the killer is the same. The premise is the same. They just changed up the years. And really, other than a couple of narrative things, these are almost the same movie, just one did it so much better. This is one of the rare instances where the ripoff is superior to the original, because this one is horribly acted. Like, there is no character in this movie that is good. No one is likable. All of them are just there. There's no good performances. It's just a bunch of people on screen. That's it. Nothing to write home about whatsoever. And it's not really a slasher, even though it's getting advertised as a slasher movie. It's more on the lines of like a Scholastic Book Fair mystery, if that makes any sense. And no, that's not me shitting on Goosebumps or Fear Street. I'm just being honest. It's like an elementary level slasher movie. It's not really violent. There's barely any slasher aspects other than a guy with a mask. It's very teen oriented, more so than Totally Killer. Like, this is like Disney Channel teen, if that makes any sense. Like, real teenagers aren't really like that, but in this world they are. And probably the biggest fail that this movie has is it completely fails to capture the essence of the early 2000s, whereas Totally Killer absolutely killed its 80s aesthetic. This movie just doesn't give us enough for us to think that she went back to 2003. Unlike, there was a movie that got released a few weeks ago, Y2K, that did a tremendous job of giving us that early 2000s aesthetic, from pop culture references to the way people dress to how people talked. All that stuff was done great in that movie. In this movie, it's like they play a couple of songs from that era and that's about it. But don't be drawn to this movie because it's on Netflix, like, and you're bored and you want to watch something. This movie sucks. Don't do that. Just go watch Totally Killer instead, because it's a much better movie. Coming in at number 7 is Tarot, and woo, this is our I believe this is our first Sony movie on the list. Yeah, this movie's really, really bad. So the story is this group of college kids are at an Airbnb for this weekend getaway, and they find a set of tarot cards. And one of the girls is in the tarot, so she begins reading everybody's fortune or whatever the hell it is, and the deck is cursed. So all of them start being picked off one by one by the card that was drawn for them. So if the card meant a certain thing, like this person rushes in too much and that leads to their death, that's how they would die. Stuff like that. It's a awesome concept. It's really, really good concept, and it had the potential to have these really cool monsters that would come off of these cards and actually go after and kill these college kids. But instead we got these really, really bad CGI monsters, and we got literally barely any violence whatsoever. It's all aftermath violence, and really it's really dark colored blood that kind of just looks like water that was darkened with a filter. And the movie just gets started right away, and it doesn't take any time to build up any tension. It does offer backstories as the movie goes on and stuff, but it's like they just throw you in there and they're like, Here's this. Now, feel bad for these kids that are getting killed. It doesn't work because nothing's built at all. It's just there. And speaking of the kids, there isn't a good acting performance in this entire movie. There is one thing I do want to touch on, though. There is an actress in this movie that's kind of like the exposition dump character that's in all of these shitty horror movies like this. And it's played by this actress, and I can't remember her name, but she is the person who played Sally Hardesty in the Texas Chainsaw 2022 movie. And every time I see this actress, I know this movie's probably going to be shitty. Because she was not only in this movie, she was in that shitty Texas Chainsaw movie, but she was also in The Watchers. She was one of the characters in The Watchers. And she's not necessarily a bad actress. She's just there, and she just keeps choosing these movies that are really bad. And she normally is that exposition dump character. But this kind of joins that group of movies that are trying to bring back those cursed movies that were really popular in the early 2000s, because Smile was so successful. Now it's like, okay, how can we have our own version of Smile? And these studios just keep cranking out these piles of shit that aren't anywhere close to that caliber of being good. And unfortunately, this was one of them. Sony Pictures has just shit the bed this year. They are like the king of putting out cash grab dog shit. The only one that's competing with them right now is Blumhouse. And Blumhouse at least has one really good release this year with Speak No Evil. Sony, the only movie I enjoyed that Sony put out this year was Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. And it had a lot of problems too. That movie wasn't spectacular. But they are definitely putting out the biggest pieces of shit this year. But again, they have competition. So let's get to Blumhouse's first entry on this list. Coming in right outside the top 5 is Imaginary, the imaginary friend horror film that has this phenomenal concept that should be so fucking good that is just horribly shitty. It's just bad. Starting out with one of the biggest problems with this movie. This is the first film on the list that I'm going to make the outrageous claim that it was written by AI. And I have zero proof to prove this. But if you watch this movie and you listen to the dialogue, real people don't talk like this, guys. There's so many examples. Just watch the movie if you want to see. Because human beings do not talk and interact the way that these characters in these movies written like this act. It has to be an AI program writing it. At the very least, the writer got Chat GPT or whatever the hell it's called to write this script. They had to have. With that dialogue, it makes the acting super wooden and robotic, so any chance of getting a good performance is dwindled down to almost nothing. The child actress in the movie, I cannot remember her name. She's in a lot of Blumhouse movies. She was actually in Megan as well. And she does pretty good. Like, it's really hard to hold it against a child actor. So I'd say she's probably the best performance in the movie. As I said before, it's a great idea, just horribly executed. The moments where you actually see Chauncey the Bear in his, like, monster form is really cool. But then you get to the finale where they kind of go into imagination land, and it looks like a fucking haunted house at Scarowinds. And for those of you that don't know what Scarowinds is, it's like a trailer park version of Universal Horror Nights. That's the best way I could put it. The set looks so cheap and weird. Like, it obviously they had a small budget, and to me, if they were going to be this ambitious with this story, they should have allotted the budget for it. Because I could have seen this movie being great if they would have had the money to go into it. At least that aspect would have been better. And honestly, the last strike that's got against it is this is a PG-13 horror film. And we've had this discussion 1,000 times that a movie does not have to be rated R for it to be a good horror film. But in this case, it is so tame and the writing is so bad and it doesn't build any tension, that the lack of violence makes it even more boring. Because there's no danger, if that makes any sense. The danger is undercutted by these really strange dialogue points in the movie and these really strange choices by the writer to kind of undercut the scary events of the movie. So this is a time where the PG-13 rating is all the way closer to the PG rating, than it is the PG-13 closer to the rated R rating, because they kind of just didn't put any kind of blood or violence in the movie. Overall, I didn't expect much out of this movie, but I thought the idea was great, so I expected it to at least be entertaining, but instead I just got this boring slag of a movie that was all potential and nothing else. And again, get me back on the Blumhouse hate. Blumhouse is the face of horror currently, and A24 is getting up there. In fact, A24 may take them this year, but overall, the face of horror cinema has been Blumhouse. They have produced more horror than any other company that has been out there for the last 5 years. And the problem is that Blumhouse went from putting out 3 great movies a year and 5 bad ones to now this current year 1 good movie and 3 bad ones. And it's one of those things where when your bad starts outweighing your good, then people stop taking a gamble on your movies. If it wasn't for Speak No Evil this year, Blumhouse would have been the worst studio that released anything this year. All right, we are breaking into the top 5. This is the top 5 worst movies of the year by yours truly. And coming in at number 5 is Afraid, the second to last Blumhouse movie on this list. This is probably one step away from being the worst that Blumhouse can offer, because this movie is essentially a nothing movie. And when I say nothing, nothing really happens in this movie. Overall, there's no grand consequence. There's no real lesson to learn. It's just this movie happened and that's it. And it's not scary, which most horror films aren't scary today, but this is devoid of any kind of tension or any kind of suspense, really. This is to go back to my point with another film on this list, it's like a Nickelodeon suspense movie. Are You Afraid of the Dark is creepier than this and scarier than this. And to me, don't label yourself a horror film in any capacity if this is how it's going to be. So the story is about this family who acquires this new state-of-the-art AI program, and they get to test it. And when they first get it, it makes their lives easier. It gets groceries delivered for them. One girl, she actually sent this boy nudes at school, and it got all over the school because he released it to everybody in the school. And she went back, erased every single photo from existence, and then put out rebuttal videos to make him look like an asshole. They actually called the police and everything on him, all this great stuff. And then slowly but surely the AI becomes more possessive, and the AI becomes this really protective of this family. And when it finds out that they don't want to have it in the house anymore because it's just being way too much, they go to remove it and all hell breaks loose. But not really. All hell doesn't really break loose. So this movie ends up going on this point where there's been this conspiracy this entire time that Aya, the AI, that the people who are selling Aya, they didn't make Aya. Aya made itself, and Aya is controlling everything. And it just never came off as diabolical as it sounds. It's like somebody seen the movie Upgrade by Lee Winnell and was like, STEM's a pretty cool idea, because STEM is like this overlord AI that is like the true villain of the movie. And they wanted to copy that, but they gave us the Disney Channel version of STEM and Aya. And it's not a bad idea, but the execution of it again was bad. There was barely any tension, like I said before. There's a point at the end of the movie where it should be real high in suspense, and you think everything's just blowing out of proportion, everything's crazy, And then it just ends. Oh, everything's fine. Let's just go about our day. I fucking hate that about these movies. And unfortunately, that's kind of a trait that Blumhouse has on their lower end movies. Also, too, I don't know who this movie's for. It's not a horror film. It's not really a sci-fi film. It's not really a teen horror. It's not really, it's more of a suspense, but I don't know who this is targeting, because adults ain't gonna like this. Kids ain't gonna give a shit about it. So this movie's supposed to be about the dangers of AI, but people who are going to watch this movie, they're not going to give a shit about this. So it's because it's just a nothing burger. This movie is a definition of a nothing burger. And what's crazy is that this is a Blumhouse and Sony team up. So what happens when Blumhouse and Sony team up? You get a match made in hell. And here it is. You get this piece of shit. It makes so much sense after doing a little research on the movie and seeing who produced it and who made it. Makes so much sense. So Sony and Blumhouse teaming up is never a good thing. They create these trailers that they piece together to try to make this compelling, like, movie that you can go see, and then you go see it and it's a big fucking nothing movie. So fuck this movie. Coming in at number 4, shocker, another Sony movie. It's Craven the Hunter. The movie about a hunter who wants you to know he's a hunter, and he wants you to know he's a hunter every single time he talks. First and foremost, just like with these Spider-Man spin-off movies, they don't fucking work without Spider-Man. Period. End of discussion. The only one that semi-works is Venom, and it really doesn't work because of his connection with Spider-Man. The fact that they brought in Craven the Hunter, a villain who is not to say he doesn't have good stories written about him, but he is not an A-tier Spider-Man villain. He is definitely low B-tier to C-tier Spider-Man villain. And they thought that they could make a whole movie about him and have people actually like it without him having a connection to Spider-Man is absolutely fucking baffling to me that they actually thought this would be a good idea. Not as baffling as the choices coming up soon, but pretty damn baffling. This movie and its plot has no point whatsoever. There is no narrative in the movie other than Craven's a hunter, and he wants you to know he's a hunter. There's no real main conflict. There's no true villain. There's no true goal in the movie. Like, it's just all over the fucking place. It's just a bunch of scenes that are strung together haphazardly. The action scenes in the movie, they're nothing special. Nothing that we haven't seen thousands of times before. Nothing innovative about the choreography. Just a bunch of guys getting shot and beat up by Craven, and not even in cool ways. Like, yeah, he runs on walls. Whoop-de-fucking do. No one cares about any of that. More importantly, it's the bastardization of the source material that's the most egregious crime in this movie. You have the character of Craven, who is a ruthless villain in the comics, that they have taken and made him this charismatic character that is the world's greatest hunter and one of the world's greatest killers, but he's sensitive. He's charismatic. That doesn't work. He's not a fucking anti-hero. He is a villain. He's not the fucking Punisher. He is a villain. And what was really crazy is that Russell Crowe's character, who plays Craven's father, that is how Craven is in the comics. And the fact that they just could not give us that is why this movie should have never been made. These villains that they tried to make these spin-offs of, this and Morbius, they're not compelling enough to make a movie on. And if you're gonna make a movie on it, you better have a damn good writer that can make this story compelling. Craven's not one of those characters that you can write about. He's not a side character, but he is not that important to the Spider-Man mythos. One of his stories, Craven's Last Hunt, is one of the greatest Spider-Man stories ever written. But next to like the Green Goblin or Dr. Octopus or the Lizard, he's a nobody. And speaking of that, they bastardized another character in this movie with the Rhino. When are these studios going to understand that just because a character has an animal-themed name or persona, that doesn't mean you got to make him a fucking animal hybrid. You don't have to make it a cross between a rhino and a man. That's fucking stupid. We don't want that. We've never wanted that. And I don't understand why they keep doing it. It's like they don't listen to us. Like they don't understand it. They would print money if they would just go by the source material. And to circle back around to the first point where it's the connection Spider-Man does, it makes it useless to do this movie. It's very strange in all of these movies, other than Venom, that anytime they get close to referencing Spider-Man, they back off completely. They refuse to call him by name, whether it be Spider-Man or Peter Parker. They purposely made it devoid of all connection to Spider-Man. And I don't understand that. If you have the movie rights, if you have those rights and you're partnering with Disney, you could still use the fucking name. You don't have to like shut your movie off completely. Like the only thing that they do little stupid things. Like in this movie, Craven's fighting a villain, and the villain can hypnotize you and bring out your worst fears and stuff. And it comes to a point where Craven is hallucinating and all these spiders are like raining down on him and stuff. And I'm sorry, but that's a dumbass way of putting a connection to Spider-Man. This is supposed to be building to the Sinister Six, and you have no connection to the Spider-Man, and you are making all these characters anti-heroes and not villains. So what's sinister about the Six? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And finally, I'm a hunter. Times 1,000. Shut the fuck up. He says this so many times in this movie. It's like, dude, we get it, you're a hunter. It's in the fucking title. We don't need you to keep saying it. And they find a way to get him to say it every time they can. It's so annoying. I knew this wasn't going to be good going in. But when they had some reshoots, I thought, maybe they'll tune it up. If they can get it to at least a Venom Let There Be Carnage level, I'd be fine with it. But little did I know that they were going to be somewhere in between Morbius and Madam Web. Probably the biggest tragedy of all this is that this movie makes Aaron Taylor Johnson look like a bad actor. And he's not. He is a phenomenal actor, and this movie is definitely a blemish on his resume. Now we're into the top three, and normally in the past, the top three would be interchangeable because they're all just equally as bad, but this is a solid top three. In this order, these, in my opinion, are the three worst movies of this year. And coming at number three is going to be Night Swim. And surprise, surprise, Blumhouse strikes again. And don't get me wrong, guys. I knew a movie about a haunted swimming pool wasn't going to be good. But my God, I didn't think it was going to be this fucking bad. This movie is the perfect example of a movie that had to be written by AI. And just like with Aya and just like with Imaginary, this one's the most egregious example. Like, there is lines in this movie that in no world would I ever see a human being ever saying this to each other, because it is so inhuman. Like, there's two scenes in particular. There's one where Wyatt Russell is, him and the kid is playing his son, are winding back this pool liner, like the cover over the pool. They're rolling it up. And Wyatt Russell gets his part done, and then he starts giving his son a pep talk who's struggling to roll his side up. And it is the most ridiculous shit that you've ever heard in your life. He's like, "It's the bottom of the ninth, son. Bases loaded. 2 outs. It's all up to you, man. Come on, son. You got to bring us home. You got to." I'm not making that up. That's exactly how it sounds. It sounds that bad. Then there's another scene that also includes Wyatt Russell and the actor that plays his son, where the son is, quote, drowned. He's drowned. And Wyatt Russell's character throughout this movie is slowly being possessed by the spirits of this haunted swimming pool. And he comes out of his trance or his possession, and just looks over deadpan at his wife, who is literally crying, holding their son who is drowned. He was like, is he okay? Oh, he's not okay. He's fucking drowned because you almost killed him. Like, it's really, really, really bad. And the fact that this movie was made at all is a problem in itself, because this movie was based off of a short, and the short's great. There's not enough material to make a 2-hour-long movie with it, and they thought they could do it. And once again, Blumhouse was wrong. I firmly believe the only reason why they did it is because this short was popular online, so they went out, bought the rights, and now they're doing it. And just like with most Blumhouse movies, this movie is slam full of jump scares, and these jump scares are telegraphed from a mile away, which most jump scares are nowadays. So I'm trying not to give them too much shit for that, but the jump scares here in particular, they might as well say, jump scare coming in 3, 2, 1. Like, it's that obvious that it's coming. And just like with most movies on this list, one of the biggest crimes is that it takes a good actor and makes them look horrible. And that's Wyatt Russell. I like Wyatt Russell. I've liked him ever since Overlord. I thought he was great in Overlord. He's really good as John Walker in the MCU, and he was really good in Monarch Legacy of Monsters. And to see him do really well in all of those, and then you see this movie, and you know damn well it's not his fault, because the movie is just so shitty made and written. It's just a damn shame to see an actor like that get that short end of the stick. Again, this movie I had no expectations for, but with Wyatt Russell being on the cast and it being based on this really good horror short online, I had a little bit of hope that it was going to be decent. And I'm a dumbass. I knew it wasn't going to be good, and I should have just kept that expectation. This movie sucked, and it's definitely one of the top 3 worst movies of this year. And I will go to my grave until someone shows me true hard evidence that this movie wasn't written by AI. I'm going to always believe it was, because there's no way that this movie was written by a human being. Coming in at number 2 is The Deliverance. And this movie's based on a true story. It's about the Hell House that's in Gary, Indiana, I believe. And when I tell you that this was the hardest watch I had all year, like when I tell you I struggled watching this movie, it's an understatement. And it's not because the movie's boring. It's not because the movie doesn't have excitement. It's not any of those obvious reasons. It's because all of these characters in this movie are some of the most insufferable characters I've seen in a film ever. I haven't seen characters this bad in a movie since Texas Chainsaw 2022. I have not seen a cast of characters that I wanted to die or get their comeuppance than this. This is the best example, and definitely the best example for this year. Literally not one good character. And the main character, the mother character, she is a piece of shit. Like, she has no redeeming qualities whatsoever. All of her kids, although I feel bad for them, all of her kids are just there. They're just kids that have no personality whatsoever. And the lead character's mother's character, played by Glenn Close, she's a piece of shit too. There's literally no one in this movie, from the social worker to the kids, that is a good character. All of them suck. Either they're assholes and they're so unlikable you can't stand them, or they're just there. And it's just some of the worst character writing I've ever seen. And I will truly say that the mother character in this movie, she's the true villain, not the demon in the house. She is a horrible mother in every aspect. Every aspect of the game, she's the worst. And this is a demonic possession movie extravaganza for tropes. It has every damn trope in the book, from an exorcism to people running up the walls to spitting pea soup on people, mauling people in a demonic possession. Every single trope that is within the possession genre is in this movie. And there's like really cringy dialogue. Everybody go look up that one scene from Deliverance. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It's been all over online when it came out. It's one that Glenn Close says when she's possessed, and it's ridiculous. And what's even crazier is the director of this, he directed Precious. He's directed some damn good movies. And I can't see any kind of an identity of him on this movie. So he must have did this and did the worst job he's ever done just so he can get a damn paycheck, because this is not the same quality work that I'm used to seeing from the guy who made Precious. So guys, just a completely insufferable watch. Like, it was extremely difficult to get through this movie, but I powered through because I knew that this movie was going to be on my worst of list. There was no doubt about it. I knew that this movie wasn't going to redeem itself. It was just going to be a piece of garbage all the way throughout, and I was 100% correct. This movie, it was so bad. The characters in it were the worst characters of the year, and it jumped right up from not even being on my list at all because I had not seen it to straight to the top 3. But coming in at number 1, and this has been number 1 all year. It has not changed. It has been firmly there. It has the worst rating I have ever given a movie. And honestly, after going back and thinking about it, I would, if I could have gave it a 0 out of 5, I would have gave it a 0 out of 5. Because Madam Web is 100% the worst movie that I've seen this year. This movie is a pile of shit, and it is a expensive pile of shit, which makes it even worse. I can go into any category you want to, starting out with the first big crime is the fact that they killed all connection to Spider-Man. They try to draw this real subtle connection to Spider-Man, as in Madam Web knows his parents and they're expecting a baby, and we might name him Peter. Like, it's just so bad. Like, just call him Peter. Just do it. You own the rights to Spider-Man. Just fucking do it. That thing, and then the fact that the villain in the movie, Ezekiel Sims, has a Spider-Man outfit on. He's doing Spider-Man shit. He is an evil version of Spider-Man in the movie. The acting was god-awful. Dakota Johnson is a terrible actress. I don't care what any of you say. She's not good. She's not a good actress. I'm glad y'all like her. I don't think she's good at all. She legitimately phoned in this entire performance, and honestly, being an untalented actress is not as bad as someone who phones it in. And she phoned in this entire movie. And quite honestly, if she didn't want to be a part of it, she should have just not been a part of it. More importantly, going back to the whole connection to Spider-Man and all that, they chose to make this movie when Madam Web is a support character. She doesn't hold a book. She's not a monthly character that you see. Madam Web shows up maybe once every 6 years to be a harbinger of doom to Peter Parker. She's not overly important to the character. And the fact that they thought this movie would work is a problem in itself, but it's fucking Sony. Sony decided, let's do a Madam Web movie first before we do a Black Cat movie. What? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever, and it just further solidifies that this universe needs to die, and it did. And I'm glad that it died. One of the funniest problems with this movie is the character of Ezekiel Sims, the majority of his lines are dubbed over in ADR because apparently his lines were so fucking awful that they had to dub them. And my God, like, none of his lines make sense. Like, he'll be about to kill a character and he'll be like, I am going to kill you now. And it'll be like, and you're like, what the fuck? What happened? We are in 2024 and they dubbed lines in a movie, in a $100+ million movie. I think this movie they spent $200 or $300 million making this movie, and they had to ADR lines, and they thought it was okay to put this shit out in theaters. Just the biggest waste of money ever. So fuck Sony. Sony is the king of shit this year. They made the worst movies that came out this year. Them, with Blumhouse being right behind them, are the kings of the cash grab. And I'm glad that it has backfired on both of them. And particularly with Sony, because they have one of the most beloved superheroes' rights, and they just consistently, after the first Amazing Spider-Man movie, they have done nothing but fuck this character up and wasted opportunity after opportunity. So I'm glad that this universe is getting snuffed, and I'm glad that we don't have to see anything with it again. It sucks that the Venom movies are gone, because even though I don't think it works without Spider-Man, I do think Tom Hardy's Venom movies are watchable. I have not seen the last one, or that might have been on this list because I heard it was awful. But the first two Venom movies are fine. They just needed a little bit more here and there, and they would have been fine movies. But these other ones, nah, man, they can keep this shit. I don't want to see this ever again. So yeah, Madam Web is the worst movie of 2024. All right, and that concludes the worst of 2024 list. Whew, that was rough, man. I'm glad I don't have to talk about these movies ever again, hopefully. So tune in for my best of 2024 list coming soon. And thank you all for watching and continuing to support the channel. If you don't mind, if you like this video, like it. And if you like it enough, please go and subscribe to the channel. And please hit the bell notification so you never miss an episode. Also, please follow me on all social media platforms so you can get channel updates, movie news, and all forms of badassery. So stay tuned for that best of 2024 list. And then we're going to move straight into 2025 with our first review of the year of Lee Whannell's Wolfman remake, which I am extremely excited for. So hopefully, fingers crossed, it's going to be good. But stay tuned. And until next time, remember, I'm Joe Grizzly, bitch.